Hello. Welcome everybody to tonight's long-awaited and totally wonderful event with Allie Brosh for her new book, Solutions and Other Problems. My name is Alex. I'm the events director at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Massachusetts. Whether you know our store well or have never heard our name before today, we are thrilled to welcome you into our community tonight. I'd like to first of all thank all of you for choosing to support Allie and an independent bookstore with your presence. I'd also like to thank the Wilbur Theatre who are hosting this event. They're our favorite venue in Boston. Like a lot of venues, they're going through a really rough time right now. And while we may not be able to fill their seats, they are the ones who have brought this event to life. We're so grateful to have them here in this virtual format, and we're happy to be able to celebrate this book 2020 style. Before we get going, just a couple nuts and bolts. The chat, you have very well noticed, is running. The Q&A box you have also noticed, but if you haven't, it's right there at the bottom. You can type in your question there. So feel free to make use of those. There will be an audience Q&A, and you definitely have good questions. I have been reading them. They're excellent. Please note that Brookline Booksmith has a strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendee can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. So far, you're all being really good, so keep that up. Please also note, I saw a few questions. We've got your books, and we've got the art prints for the people who are getting those. Those will be shipping out immediately. You will soon find out whether you were one of the lucky 500 first orders that get the art print. And we're just really excited. We beat that number by a long shot. This is a really great full room, and it's really incredible to have all of you here. Tonight's conversation will be between Allie and Mark Maron. For over 30 years, Mark Maron has been writing and performing comedy for print, stage, radio, online, and television. His landmark podcast, WTF with Mark Maron, has become a worldwide phenomenon, averaging 6 million downloads each month, with over 500 million lifetime downloads. Those are like very large numbers. And I believe that a lot of you probably contribute to them. Maron currently stars in the hit Netflix original series Glow, and his critically acclaimed half-hour scripted television series Maron aired for 4 seasons on IFC. Mark will star in the forthcoming films Respect and Stardust. He's released several comedy specials on Netflix. He's an incredible interviewer. It is wonderful to have him here tonight. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Now, I know I really absolutely do not have to introduce tonight's author to any of you, so I will be brief on this count. Allie Brosh is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Hyperbole and a Half, which was named the Goodreads Choice Award winner for Best Humor Book of the Year. Brosh has also given herself many prestigious awards, including Fanciest Horse Drawing and Most Likely to Succeed. You can find her ongoing work and adventures at hyperboleandahalf.blogspot.com. But before we get going, I want to take a moment to acknowledge what Allie's work means to the people at this event. Probably lots of things that I don't know and can't enumerate, but anyone who has read any Hyperbole and a Half and fallen in love knows that it's complete magic. Technicolor, manic chaos that perfectly combines the intensity of its humor with the intensity of its real and infinitely relatable emotion. It takes a razor-sharp kind of intelligence and empathy to make a triangle-headed, bright pink stick figure demon child into one of the most poignant, beloved, and big-hearted characters on the literary scene. But here we are. Allie's work is for when the world feels like it's both too big and too small for you, or when you're too big and too small for it. Her work really shows that the littlest, normalest things that happen in our lives are actually completely incredible. And if we love our own stories and dive into them with glee and a complete lack of shame, we'll find something really, really funny and significant and good. I know so many people who just check periodically to find out if there is more hyperbole to come, who've been waiting for this book, and I know what it was like when Solutions and Other Problems was announced and everyone I knew found out. I have to say, I really, really wish that we could be doing this live and in person. The incredible thing is that you guys are coming from all over the country, and this group of people couldn't be doing it in person. But I would love to feel the sheer level of joy in that one room. I hope that you're all going to share it across the distance in the chat and with the people you're still allowed to see fewer than 6 feet apart. We're all together tonight, and I'm just so excited. With that, I'll look forward to seeing you for the Q&A. And please, with your biggest chat applause, welcome Mark Maron and Allie Brosh.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Allie.
Hi, Mark.
So what? How you doing? How's the blanket fort?
The blanket fort is awesome. It's quite warm. I feel cozy. I hope everybody else feels cozy. Are you feeling good?
I feel great. Yeah, I'm out in my garage. This is where I'm most comfortable. And I
Did
have
you
the new.
remodel your garage?
It's a new garage, Allie. I moved
It's a
to a
new
different
garage?
place. Yeah. And all the books are upstairs now. It's very streamlined. It's very professional. I have the new book. I read the whole
Awesome.
book. I read the whole book, and it was very moving and exciting. And I'm always nervous to talk to you. And I haven't talked to you since.
You're nervous? You shouldn't be nervous to talk to me.
I know that
was-
I shouldn't. I shouldn't. But I haven't talked to you since 2014. And a lot of us are sort of like, where's Allie been? And I guess we'll get into that. But you're going to read a bit of the new book, correct?
Yes. I would like to read the first chapter.
All right, you go for that, and I'll come back in a little bit.
All right. See you in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay. So now we got to figure out the steps to do this. So I'm going to be reading the first chapter of the book. It is called Bucket. I'm not going to be doing the voices in the panels because I had a traumatic experience with that when I was young with Garfield, and I don't want to do cartoon voices for that reason, just to protect you from having that experience. So there might be some like awkward silences while I wait for everybody to read the panels, but like just roll with it if you can. And all right, let's see if I can share my screen and share that. Okay. All right, this is good. I got my button. Oh. Oop. All right, so this is the chapter called Bucket. The first time I can remember feeling truly powerless, I was 3 and I was trapped sideways in a bucket in the garage. The bucket belonged to my dad. He used it for washing the car. I don't remember exactly how or why this started, but through some contortion of childhood logic, I decided that I needed to get my entire body into the bucket. And we can move these panels if we need to. I may need to. Let's see. Let's try that. Nope. That's minimize. Oops. Uh-oh. Okay. Anyway, the bucket had other plans. Maybe I had something to prove. Maybe there was a compelling reason to need to be entirely inside the bucket that I don't remember, but I couldn't let it go. The fact that I couldn't fit my whole body into the bucket infuriated me. Initially, attempts were confined to car washing days. Slowly, though, I sought out opportunities to make extracurricular assaults. I'd sneak into the garage by myself to try out different configurations. That's how I ended up alone in the garage, trapped in the bucket. When both my shoulders finally dropped below the bucket's rim, I felt only the briefest flash of triumph before the sensation of being trapped kicked in. I had done it. My entire body was in the bucket. Except now, the only thing I wanted was to not be in there anymore. No amount of thrashing could free me, but it did make the bucket tip over. And suddenly there I was, sideways, 4 limbs deep in a plastic car wash bucket, only 3 years old and already doomed to spend my life scooting around like the world's saddest upside-down hermit crab. This is not what I'd been trying to accomplish. I didn't even realize it was possible. That's the scary thing about decisions. You don't know what they are when you're making them. Fortunately, it wasn't permanent. I was rescued when my parents accidentally walked close enough to the garage to detect screaming. and the bucket was relocated to a high shelf to prevent me from interacting with it, which wasn't enough. The incident had only strengthened the drive to exert my will upon the bucket. I wouldn't be content with anything less than total domination now. A bucket shouldn't be able to stop a person, and I was willing to do whatever had to happen to prove it. The only thing worse than getting trapped in the same bucket 19 times is surrender. And that's the end of the first chapter.
That was great.
Thank you.
I now it's like, is the PowerPoint done? Are we going to be on? How's
yeah,
this work?
let's us
Oh,
get on there. Okay,
there.
is that better?
There we are. Yeah.
I forgot I had to dismiss the PowerPoint.
So, Allie, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too.
And like I said, it's been since like 2014 since I saw you. And I remember when I reached out to you the first time, I was nervous, and I thought like Hyperbole and a Half was this genius book, and I didn't know what you would be like or where you would come from, and you know whether you were sad or happy. And now it's been like it seems like it's been forever. And you know, my friend Kit is like, you know, everyone's been worried about Allie. Where has she been? What has she been doing? She disappeared. So what have you been doing?
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah,
you know,
a lot of it's in the book.
A lot of it is. It's hard to summarize like exactly what I've been doing because it's 7 years.
Well, let me put it this way. Like I remember when I talked to you in 2014, that it seemed like the death of your sister was relatively recent.
Yeah, it had happened about 6 months ago, I believe, at the point
before that, right?
Yeah.
And you were, you know, obviously still in grief, and you know, like I'm dealing with some of that now, and it seems to
about
me,
the same time period too.
right? It's about 4 or 5 months. But I remember that, you know, that we were talking about, you know, your parents and you know, and you and you know your depression around that time, and you seem pretty great right now. And it seems in the book
That's an illusion.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but I thought I'd throw it out there. But it seems in the book that, you know, you definitely set out to process some of this stuff.
Yeah. I'm always trying. I think like something I've realized is that like trying is the one thing you can control in life. And so I'm always like really trying to do whatever I can to get better, to learn about myself, to learn about like what's comforting, what makes life feel a little bit easier for this creature.
The creature being you.
Yeah. Seems like you have a similar trajectory. Like you're another trier.
You know, I think that's true, and I think that the sort of the need to realize that you have to be vulnerable and open to things, and that if you have a natural sort of compulsion to be empathetic, even to your detriment, it's easy to want to close up and just say, you know, fuck everything.
Yeah.
And I see some of that, you know, that journey in your thing. I think a lot of people are going to be excited that it wasn't Simple Dog in the other book.
Yes, Simple Dog was in, and she's in this one too.
Yeah, the return of Simple Dog is exciting for everyone.
Yeah, she unfortunately is not my dog anymore. But so she is in the book. I still have,
That happened too.
That did happen. Yeah, the divorce happened. It was a very amicable divorce. All decisions were made, you know, with respect to what was best for the people and animals involved.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, just trying really hard again to make like good decisions. It's an area that's weird to talk about because, you know, like during the process of writing the book, I kept coming up against this thing that like when you're like writing, say, a fiction story, you decide when the characters enter and leave the story.
Yeah.
But in real life, you don't decide that. And, you know, you can make some decisions that impact that, you know, like deciding to get divorced. But it's not every decision is made with like storyline in mind, and it's like a weird thing to be writing. I know that there's
Right.
these characters are important and special to people, and they're important and special to me, and so it was a difficult thing, figuring out
Right.
how to talk about that.
Sure. I mean, it is difficult to find the balance, because there's so many feelings that are loaded up in it. And I think the one thing, out of many that we share is a need to find, it's not even an intentional need to find humor, but the way we process this stuff is to put it out there in the world. And I think the humor comes, like, I imagine when you're doing the cartoons, when you're doing the animation, and you're sort of seeing it come alive on the paper, that there's a relief in that humor can kind of contextualize things in a way that is not so painful that you can't get through things anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a huge relief in like understanding something.
Right.
And if I can figure out how to like communicate it and put it into a format that like other people may understand, it feels like making progress, or just
Right.
putting it out there, like touching something in the void, if
Yeah. And you get a little closure. Like there must be some element of discovery that you have, when you're able to execute this stuff. I mean, fiction is sort of like you can just kill people and move people around, and it doesn't matter because they're
it's much
kind of
more
your,
convenient.
they're your puppets. But when you draw from real life, I mean, you still don't know how. Well, you ultimately know how it's going to end, and I think that the awareness of that is something that haunts us. But
yeah certainly is.
but
High five.
yeah, but that element of seeing it, of creation, of creativity, of putting it on the paper, it really makes life worth living. And I feel that in the book. I mean you don't fuck around when you write a book. It's like it's the size of a Bible, when
It's very big.
but I mean, where does it start with you? Like out of this book? Because I don't want to spoil any of the book for anybody, so it makes it a little tricky to talk
I
about
should
it.
probably be aware of that too. That's
Yeah, but I mean, we can talk in a general way. That when did you really start working on this one?
so I started working on this one. Gosh, when would be the earliest? Like, there's some material in there that I've been working on for like over a decade now.
Oh, really? Like which pieces?
I feel like which chapter is? Let me open it real quick and look at the chapters for reference. So chapter 6,
Yeah.
the kangaroo pig gets drunk. That one is one that I've been working on since at least 2011 in some capacity. Like we're talking like a few of the panels.
So that's interesting to me. So like, because that involves Simple Dog, right? That one,
Yes.
it still
Yes.
has him, because that's your
Mhm.
older life. So it would be back before everything happened. So like, is it like me with a joke? You have an idea, you have a story, the story is a great story and it's rich, and you kind of like hammer out a few of the points and it's good enough, but it's not finished. And you kind of wait till it kind of finishes itself over time.
Yes, like very much. You saying that, I feel so understood as a creative person. I'm glad it works that way for somebody else too.
I have bits I did on television that weren't finished. I mean, they were funny enough, but
I've seen some of them that you seem to be going through in real time, and it became like its own thing, which is valuable in and of itself, because it's honest.
Right. That's just part of the creative process. Like, if it's good enough and you put it out there, okay, people will like it. But then if you put it out there when it's finished, again, people will like it more. I don't think that you can do that with all medium, but comedy you can.
Yeah, and it's that like nice thing to shoot for. Like, I'm always trying to improve my communication and figure out how to streamline it, get better at it. And I think that it did take me a very, very long time to get to the point where I could communicate the ideas. Like, I don't know if you feel this way, but if you have, like, when you're trying to say develop an idea that you have a strong feeling about, like I want to talk about this topic or this thing, and I want it to feel like, whatever it is in your head.
Yeah.
Where it's just like this weird thing that I can feel and I can sort of get a view of it, like it's like out of my peripheral vision or whatever, but it takes a really, really long time to move closer. Like there'll be little pieces of the puzzle that happen like as I'm having experiences or learning new things about what it means to be a person in the world.
Right.
Um,
Well,
but
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think that what happens with people, yeah, and I don't think we're exactly alike, but I mean, if you spend a
probably
lot
not
of
exactly.
but I mean, I think if you spend a lot of time in your head and you're trying to, figure out, like, I know how to communicate, I can talk to somebody, but when you get the sort of the seeds or the kernels of an idea and there's a lot there, how do you communicate it? What are the beats? How do you disarm it enough so it's not so sensitive that, putting it out there is it's not going to hurt you to put it out there. How
Yeah,
did
yeah.
right?
How
How
do you
does it
disarm your own like defensiveness about the thing to
right, right, and then it
be able
usually
to talk
turns
about it
out to
honestly?
right. It turns out to be pretty simple. And I think, like, it seems to me the way you do that, like, even in the whole piece in here about the guy who works at the grocery store, right? So you're actually exploring the reason why it's difficult for you to communicate in that piece. Like, there's a lot
Mhm.
of pieces in here that are revealing to these, I think, these basic uh, um, character traits that you have that really explore that, because you have a lot going on in your mind and it has nothing to do with reality, and that is the subject of that particular piece, but it's something completely relatable, but that is what hinders us, so it is also what makes us funny.
Yeah, I mean, so do you ever in your process, so say you're writing a bit to do on stage,
Yeah,
um, do you ever find early in the bit that it feels like I mentioned defensiveness
yeah. Oh
earlier,
yeah, yeah,
that yeah, that you'll read through and be like, oh man, why am I talking, like why am I explaining so much? I could just
yeah,
that
yeah.
feels like a big turning point for me often, where it's like I
Where, oh, would simplify it, where you realize, like, I'm trying too hard, or I'm over explaining it, and
yeah, like
yeah,
like there will be a point in the process where it's like I just generate a lot of material, right, like as much as I can
right,
about the topic, and
right,
and then in the process of like trying to put it into a digestible format,
right.
eventually realize like, oh man, like it would actually read a lot better if I didn't like try to over explain this thing
Yeah, of
and make
course.
myself like ultimately sympathetic. I don't.
Well, I mean, I think that's true. I think that when the tendency to over explain is to sort of build in some sort of like, well, I didn't, I could have simplified it. It's not a defense mechanism, it's a rationalization. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
right. So you're kind of building in this thing that over explains it. So if anyone criticizes it, it's sort of like, well, I already said that, that's in
Yep,
there.
yep. Yeah, it's like, well, I called it, so like I
Yeah.
get credit for.
for for not making it as good as it could be by not explaining it too much. But I think also what I noticed about reading this book, and in retrospect the other book, is that there, I assume that it's all you. I assume that it all really happened. But in a lot of ways, it is a character. It is this
Yeah,
character.
yeah.
But also there, the one thing I notice is that, like, it's an ageless character. So I think one of the benefits that you have in not having to over explain is, like, is it a child? Is it an alien? Is it some sort of, like, savant elfin being?
You get
Like,
it. You get the that's the whole that's the yeah. You can't come
well,
to conclusions about something that looks like a little alien and it's unfamiliar and it's
but it's ultimately so human. But I think the beauty of it is, even when you're talking about divorce, or the death of your sister, or what does life mean, or right and wrong. I mean, animals, I can understand animal mind and and child mind around animals, but to address these bigger challenges of being alive, dealing with pain, dealing with sort of existential uh, darkness and depression, when it's just this little thing, having sort of seemingly childish observations, but that are very poetic and very deep, it's easier to get through to the heart. And I imagine that that must feel the way it to you as well when you write it.
I mean yeah, I think it's a good tool to like be able to strip away the complexity of something to sort of,
Yeah,
I think I do a similar thing when I'm trying to like understand other people, where you try to take away all of these like the surface things that's making them seem like, oh, this person's a monster, this person's an asshole, this person is like whatever label you could call somebody, and strip it away to like just whatever this animal is that you're you're
Right.
interacting with.
That you
Um,
right. You kind of like, I think that's why, I don't know, but I mean, your relationship with animals is, I think there's a lot more of it in this book, and there's many animals. Am I right?
Interesting. I didn't realize, I hadn't counted. I don't know which one has more.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I mean, I didn't refresh my memory on
You could
hyperbole.
absolutely be right. I have no idea.
It just seems that there's a lot more animals, and I think that, your empathy for the idea of of what animals are thinking, in relation to what human beings put them through. I think it's really telling about people in general, that that will, that in order to entertain ourselves, or in order to feel some emotional connection, we're going to, dress this dog up in a costume and have some laughs, and you sort of turn the tables on it. But I think that, the ability to be, empathetic with animals, and also see your own faults in it, like, I feel bad for this dog because I'm the problem, uh, is a nice way to sort of like really kind of deal with the idea of empathy in general. It almost could be something you could teach a child.
I mean, yeah, like I've spent a lot of time thinking about empathy. I have this like theory that it's the most, that it's a very logical way to be, that
Yeah.
that being empathetic kind of allows you to see more of the information
Hmm.
behind the surface, to have like, better information to interact with people with, to like,
Right. Right.
communicate, strike a compromise, anything like that. And so yeah, at empathy, ethics, like those types of things they seem very, very important to me recently,
Well,
especially in like how crazy the world is. I don't know,
I
it's
thought that,
just
like, that one chapter in, the one with the which one is it? The hammer. Oh, fairness.
hamburger.
Well, I mean, but I think that, in a basic way, the addressing a fear and a sense of lawlessness, and the idea of feeling helpless in regards to it, that, you're able to do this with a situation with your neighbor, in that it's just annoying. But I think all the emotions that the character goes through, is feeling that futility and that fear of like, is anybody in charge? Is anybody going to take care of this? Is anybody going to help us? And I think that,
This is so validating, by the way. This is like, when you put something out there and you are hoping that like you don't know yet how people
yeah,
are gonna, I feel like in your experience, like on stage, maybe you get like more of a live
right,
response.
yeah.
I haven't entirely gotten that yet, so this is like my first. I just wanted to let you know that I am feeling very good about this. About I feel
I'm glad.
I
I'm
feel
glad.
understood.
Good, good. Well, I feel very connected to your work, and I was
I feel
thrilled.
connected to yours as well.
Thank you. I thought I was very flattered and honored that you asked me to do this. And, I don't want to get choked up, but um the but I think that, like, even in the hammer thing, uh that the solution for you and for the character was, in essence, creativity. And this without spoiling, the story. But, like, the only solution you could come up with was to somehow baffle this person, with creativity, to the point where they kind of lost their momentum in being, without respect for other people.
So yeah,
Right?
I think this is one of the things that I relate to you about, I think that we're both characters who tend to be prone to like handling things with subversiveness,
Yeah.
wanting to like get in there and kind of push the buttons and dismantle the thing from from a point of like
Right. Right.
confusion, and be like, maybe inject a little bit of chaos, so it's
Yeah. 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 Let the control freak come unhinged so we can feel better.
or maybe so that the whole machine works better without the like
Yeah. Yeah.
the
I
well,
think so. I don't know how many times I think about the whole machine working better, but like, I don't like to feel defensive or angry or hurt or sad And it seems like the only way to sort of really combat that is to sort of, you know, be open and realize that, you know, whatever you're afraid of is probably, you know, in terms of, you know, creativity or in terms of other people in your life, is probably just something you're making up or something from trauma a long time ago. And to stay open is the only real defense you have against
Yeah.
those things,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah. And like, even when they turn out to like not be imaginary, it's still, you
Yeah,
know, we've both had experiences, I think, where
yeah,
you're confronted with sort of a depth of what can happen, you know,
yeah,
to a
yeah.
person. And
Yeah, we definitely had it, you know, like, you know, like, you know, heartbreak, you know, to start with the easier one, you know, like a divorce or something not working out like that. You know, there's some solace, but also some sort of, you know, continuing possibility for resentment that, you know, the person is still out in the world, you know, like,
yeah,
wait, like,
we can't control all of the variables in the universe. It's not possible.
right. Yeah.
And
So like if somebody breaks your heart and they go away, they're like, you know, they're still out there and they might show up on your phone or you might hear about them, you know, so that kind of, that tempers the heartbreak, but it also makes it worse. But the finality of losing somebody you love is this whole other different thing. And they're both fundamentally human experiences and everybody deals with them eventually, but it doesn't make them any better or any more manageable or any more or any less awful. And, you know, I think that when you talk about like that one page in the book, well, I'll ruin this one where it just says the main conflicts in life: food, power, what to do about the unavoidable realization that nothing is fair or means anything.
so that's the
I mean,
answer to what I've been doing over the past 7 years, by the way. Right there is just trying to figure that page. That's the just trying to figure that shit out. I don't,
yeah.
and I don't know.
But yeah, I know. But like the answer really comes into, it really seems to me to be connection with people, don't you? Are you talking to enough people, Allie?
I'm, you know, I think now I
Yeah,
am. It's hard for me to tell. I have a tendency to isolate and a tendency to
yeah.
want to just like get, you know, be in my own little bubble and not talk to anybody. I barely leave my house,
Like
but
a
it has
blanket fort.
exactly like a blanket fort with just me. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's hard to say what enough people is. Like, do you ever have that feeling? I don't. Do you
Oh
feel
yeah.
more like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fortunate in that, you know, like, you know, a lot of people reached out and, you know, it was a very public thing with me and you know, like more than, you know, hundreds, you know, thousands of strangers reached out. And I know not everybody can get that kind of support. And it did help. But I find in my day-to-day life, talking to people that I love and that understand me, you know, definitely helps, because I have a tendency to isolate too, because you start to feel bad for feeling bad,
Yes. What is that? Why?
because you feel like you're draining people. Like, you know, it's like, how you doing? I'm not good again, but right.
Yeah, it does feel
But
like that. There's
but
a distinct sense of guilt, and I have that sometimes when like I'm not going through something tragic, like even with book promotion, where I'm like, here, look at this thing. Just asking for attention in general is like guilt inducing.
but but you know, it's sort of like, I think the lesson in that one story about the guy at the supermarket is like, we don't know what other people are thinking. Most of the
Yeah,
time, what we think they're thinking, we're projecting, and most of the time, they're just thinking about themselves. And a lot of times, they genuinely care about you, and you know, and it's a matter of whether you can accept that, which I think is like, you know, I don't want to talk too much, but the last chapter, I mean, it seems like,
you aren't talking too much. I'll
oh,
reassure you right now, you're not talking too much.
like, I think the chapters, you know, you kind of laid the book out very well, and I think you were very conscious of, you know, the fact that, like, you know, in the middle, you were going to deal with grief, you were going to deal with your relationship with your sister, what you feel like you know, had or didn't have, what you should have had, what you wish you had, and the nature of you know, being a kid and having these relationships that you can't, you know, ever get back and change, but, you know, having some acceptance. And then I think you were very careful, like, all right, I'm gonna do a little of this here, you know, I'm gonna drop that in the middle, you know, and then I'm gonna play around and confront, you know, technology and fairness and dogs. And then at the end, I'm going to deal with isolation and, and my relationship with myself. Right.
Hmm.
So what is, like, with all this isolating, Allie, I mean, where does your head go? Is it all on the page here, or I find that I can't trust my head. It's not going to go to a good place. And, it'll only make me resentful and more sad and more, like less willing to talk to people.
I think that I have definitely felt like that. I mean, part of what I've been trying to do is make my head a safer place for me.
Yeah.
If that
How's
makes
that
sense.
going?
I think it's going well.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm building a more seaworthy ship. Like
Okay.
it's something that feels a bit stronger to be on board of, and it's a constant quest. There's always things that can happen that
No, but I
destabilize
don't you
on a
get,
daily basis. Like I feel like I've cried within. I cried yesterday. I cried.
yeah,
Like it's a.
I squirted out a couple like 5 minutes ago. So
I am so surprised that I haven't. Honest, like right now,
good.
I get like I think
Yeah.
I have this like terror response where
Yeah.
I get like really just stoic and internal, like or no crying, no nothing, just like shut it down. And
Right. Yeah. I mean, I try to do that, but you're further away from the grief. With the
yes,
grief,
yes,
I mean, it's just like, it was just a couple weeks ago where I have some control over crying in front of strangers on my street. Just people like, how's it going? Like, I don't know. It's okay. And they kind of just walk by and they're like, okay, they understand what's up because it was so public. But
I always feel like that should be like a more acceptable thing. Like
I think
everybody
it
has
is.
been in
I
that
think it is.
position.
I think
It
it
is,
is.
yeah.
No, I think
Okay,
that
that's
that's one of
good.
those
That's
things
good
we
that
feel
you've had that
guilty about.
experience. Yeah,
No,
that's a good
because like,
point. That's a really good point.
right, because
That it's like,
everyone that I've
yeah,
done that with, they kind of stand there. But what do you expect them to do? Like if they ask me how I'm doing, and I'm like, I cry, and and I'm like, it's hard. They stand there and they look at me and they go, well, okay, But what else are they? Yeah, the
yeah.
fact that
What
they
else is
stand
anybody
there,
gonna do?
right? But I think that books like yours that explore the parameters of trying to sort of pull out of mental difficulty. But what I was going to say before I remember is that because of the divorce, because of the death, and because of these experiences, and realizing that they're common, and realizing that they're human, and realizing that you have no choice but to move on, which you've decided, because like when I talked to you, you didn't know where your brain was going to go, and it was scary.
Yeah,
And
uncertainty is scary.
well, sure, but I mean, I felt like you were straddling a depression that you were scared of. I mean, uncertainty is one thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's still feel like depression's a
Yeah.
regular part of my life.
Sure, but
Yeah,
like,
but
but the idea of learning that you have sort of an ability to kind of to deal with it, and that you're building this relationship with yourself, and you can make those decisions, around those
yeah,
feelings. It's
it's
great.
a feeling of kind of like a little bit like it's not the kind of control that we dream of having, like this
Right.
ultimate power where you can like actually decide what happens to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but more of just like this little piddly kind of power that you can be like, all right, well, this is something I can do,
Right.
just
But
something, and like a
right. But also realizing that really being able to distinguish between what you really have no control over, and that you can let your brain have a break from trying to, is good.
it's a hard thing though. Like I don't know, is there anything for you that is like the signature of that thing? Like if you're in, say, like an anxiety spiral
Oh,
and you're trying to like talk yourself out of it, is there any point at which you're like, okay, yeah, I can recognize this is
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, of
yeah, so
course.
what does that point, like what does that point feel like to you? How does that?
Well, it really, like, like there's a story, and then we can turn over and get some questions from the people. It's a sobriety story where, like, the story is about a guy who's sitting on a couch, and he's like, he's newly sober and he's losing his mind. And he calls his sponsor up and he says, man, you know what? The world sucks. I'm in trouble, man. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with my car. Like, I want to use drugs again. The woman I was dating is like, keeps fucking texting me. And I'm like, I'm just, I'm losing it, man. And the world is going to end. It's terrible. And the guy on the phone goes, where are you right now? And the guy goes, I'm on my couch. And then the guy on the phone says, so you're just a guy on a couch. And the guy's like, yeah, all right, well, why don't you just be that then? So like the idea, I don't know, I love that story more than most people
That is,
do.
I'm like, this is so perfect. Like this is, I love it.
But being able to decipher, you know, what is going on in your head because your brain is generating it and what is real, that's the
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
That's the point where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, my brain's making this up. I'm going to try and stop that now.
Yeah, I'm gonna just, come back to being just a guy on a couch.
Right.
And that's like the most, that is literally like the most comforting feeling I've ever felt, is the feeling of like zooming
Yeah.
out of the like maelstrom of
Right.
of anxiety into that. Oh, all right. Well, I guess
And also, let's not disregard the fact that you took the time to put all this work into this beautiful new book, and clearly your creativity is intact, and it was very moving and beautiful and funny and as good or better than the last book, which is great. And I'm just so thrilled to see you, and I'm so thrilled that you're doing okay.
I'm thrilled about the exact same things, Mark.
Well, why don't we let the fans in here and take some questions?
Love it.
Does Alex want to come back? I don't know how it works. Who's going to decide?
I think Alex is going to come back.
Okay.
Because I imagine people are going to have questions for both of us, and it'd be weird if you're.
Okay. Well, it was great talking to you one-on-one.
Great talking to you too.
Mm.
Hello again. We do have many, 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 many questions, and we're going to see how many we can get through. Some of you have compressed your questions a little bit because there are themes, but I thought we'd start with
like did people cooperate in this?
No, but they but they know what's important. So yeah, obviously a lot of people want to know what it's like to have a new book out. And I think this is kind of like a heavy question, right? Because it's a very new book.
I welcome the heavy questions.
So I don't know if you even know how you feel about it yet, but obviously this is one where like people have been waiting, people have been watching, people haven't been judging, but they've been so excited. So what is that experience like so far?
I mean, it's surreal. I think that it contrasts pretty sharply with my day-to-day lifestyle. It's been 7 years since I've like really talked to a lot of people, and so it's I think I'm just trying to like take it in and be, get the value out of the experience for what it is, and enjoy the process of having like people being, people to talk to, people to say things to. Suddenly I have like an overabundance of of interactions, and it's it can be a bit overwhelming, I think, because I tend to be quite introverted, but that there's also like a lot of excitement and fun in it. So I'm trying to roll with it, and yeah, just have as much fun as possible with the.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that it's opening a lot of conversations. I mean, I feel like we can see just in the chat that, and just from, having read a lot of your work already, the way that you write really opens people up. And so, of course, they want to reach out. And I think many people are greatly relieved to have more stories that they can turn to. So we can talk about a few different kinds of storytelling. We have a bunch of questions that are all across mediums. Katie would like to know, Allie, I know you've said that you learned a lot about comedic storytelling from watching stand-up. Who are some of your favorite comedians?
That's a loaded question.
I thought so. That's why I wanted to ask it.
I suggested you first out of a lineup of people for a reason, Mark.
You know I love you.
I think you have a very curious mind, and that shows up in your work. And,
thank you.
And I value that.
Yeah.
And so the obvious question. Yeah. Oh gosh. So this is something I've made lists because I knew that this was going to come up.
You like Bamford?
I fucking love Maria Bamford. My goodness, she is like my people.
You two are you're the geniuses that I always look to for the deep stuff.
I imagine we feel the same way about you and about
Oh,
there.
well, thank you.
I feel like comedy is something that like all comedians like really value and hold dear. It's our coping mechanism, right? And when you
Sure.
see somebody who uses it in a like beautiful way that like you haven't figured out yet, that you admire, like that's like a super super cool thing. So Dave Chappelle's specials these last few years, I think have been like an amazing example of how you can tell a story that is both like real and has all of that bad stuff in it, but is also like just uplifting and true to life. I think it's a type of optimism that I can get behind.
Sure.
That I can believe in. I can't believe the optimism that's like, you know, just pretend everything's okay and be only positive. But I felt like Dave Chappelle's specials over the last few years. I don't know when the first one came out. But he did several in a row that were amazing. Oh my goodness. Oh shoot. So this is kind of so I have a bunch of transcripts on my computer from Nate Bargatze's.
He's great. Nate, I used to take him on the road with me. He used to open for me. He opened for me at Carnegie Hall, but now he's his own big star. Great. I could see how you could like that guy. I mean, he's just like, he's so straight ahead. You know, he's got a great pace. He doesn't, no filth, just very full of heart and just very relatable story. He's so funny. I'm so happy.
Very efficient at communicating.
Like, for sure.
Like
for
he
sure.
presents himself as kind of like, oh, well, I'm dumb or whatever, but he isn't.
Right.
He's not at all dumb.
No, he's not dumb. But he does live a certain life. He's being honest.
Yes.
He's not dumb, but you know, he does like see things the way he sees things, you know.
Yeah, but I can appreciate that. I like being exposed to different perspectives.
That's a very good choice. I'm very thrilled that you like Nate.
I feel I could talk about this for like.
That's all right. You don't have
like the way you are about records, Mark. I am about stand-up comedy. Like that's my record collection I have.
Sure.
I've studied
all the comics.
You know, it's something that I'll like, you know, rewind videos. I'll take transcripts out and like analyze every like beat of a joke. And
oh, really?
It's very important to me. Very, very important to me.
It's so interesting because when you're talking about that, like about how I write a joke by talking. So like,
interesting.
I never write jokes. I write ideas and I write thoughts and I write fragments of poetry and, you know, just little pieces of things that make sense of the world for me. But all the jokes evolve over repetition by telling the stories on stage.
That's awesome. It's a much more like that seems like a braver way to do it.
Yeah, but it's crazy because, you know, like that means I have to get a theater, a small theater of a couple, you know, that only seats 100 or so people, tell people that I'm just talking. And if they maybe do it for free or for $5 and just say, look, I'm going to probably talk for 2.5 hours, have no expectations. And if you want to be part of that, come on down. So that's how I write. Secretly with a group of 100 people.
This is great. This actually partially answers Sonia's question, which was for both of you about how you learn to turn your thoughts and feelings into like an outward voice, because Sonia has trouble expressing these things.
Oh, that's my part. How do you do it, Allie? How do you do it?
How did I learn? Like,
to make your voice, to be heard.
Mm-hmm. So I think that I like most things when I'm trying to learn something, I'll watch, like I'll first kind of try to like observe other people doing this, or like, you know, just watch the information that I have available. So like if I'm trying to learn comedy, I'll watch stand-up comedians. If I'm trying to learn, say, games, like I've been really into the game Hearthstone. I'll watch streamers and just kind of like, you know, use my own emotional reactions, like internal reactions or like predictive thoughts as like a test, and sort of like observe I don't know, it's very, specifically with humor, like I don't feel like I started out funny. I don't think I'm naturally a funny person at all. I've always appreciated it. I've always been somebody who like, you know, gets a joke or laughs at other people, but learning how to generate it was a very, very purposeful, very like try hard kind of kind of journey for me.
I've seen a lot of funny people go through that, though. I think you probably were funny. You just didn't know how to be funny.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I hadn't, maybe, yeah, I hadn't learned.
you would be surprised who I've seen, because I've been doing comedy so long, who great comics that you know are hilarious today that were just unwatchable
I mean,
when they were.
you have to make the mistakes to like have
Oh yeah,
something
you got to
to,
figure out your voice.
yeah, and it's a constantly evolving process too. Like there's still, you know, it's happened enough times that I assume it's going to keep going kind of indefinitely, or I'm
Yeah.
never going to arrive at a,
Right.
like, this feels like, all right, I'm done. Like,
No, you don't want to ever be that way.
do you feel like you started out funny? I just wanted to ask real quick. Do you feel like you were, did you,
Well,
Mark?
I've watched myself from the 80s, Mark Maron version, from when I started writing jokes, and I was more diligent about that. I do think I am a naturally funny person, but I actually think I made myself less funny for a few years.
I felt that way
Because
about myself as well.
yeah, but I definitely, I definitely have always used humor to upset teachers and disarm situations.
That's actually great. So Bethany says, thanks for your triumphant return, and also asks what prompted you to initially start your blog, which I think is a really interesting question, given what you just said about like you're intentionally teaching yourself comedy, when hyperbole and a half is like absolutely hysterical from the first moment. So yeah, how did that happen?
So I believe I started it in 2009. It was like July 9th, or July 7th, July something, 2009. And it was, so that I feel like there were some contextual things. Like I was playing around with being funny. Like I would post things on, say, Facebook, and I post photo albums of like chronicling my trials with the stomach flu or something that felt fun to me to post. And
Nothing
then I
more
had
fun than stomach flu.
I was taking summer classes that year, and I was procrastinating on studying for a physics final. I've described myself before as like laterally productive. If I'm supposed to do this thing, I will suddenly feel like super motivated to do this other thing, like whatever isn't the main thing I'm supposed to be doing. And so it was a procrastination technique. I think that it was a thing that seemed easier to do in contrast to studying for this physics final, which I did end up studying for, but not immediately.
So speaking a little bit more about the format that you use, Amanda was wondering whether you find it easier to work through things in your life through writing or drawing as opposed to other ways, whether one of those formats is easier for you, or whether they're just like inextricably linked, and the best way forward is through this exact format that you've been using.
So I think that they serve a different kind of role for me. Writing is more intentional. Writing feels like, and it's harder for that reason, but I think it equally like valuable to formulating my thoughts, like trying to figure out how to put them in this structure that structure is hard for me. I don't adapt like naturally to a structured environment. And so when having to like go through and organize my thoughts, like that's a very useful tool for exploring, like, why is it hard to organize my thoughts? What about this is the sticking point for me? So that's sort of the role writing plays. Drawing is a lot more like, I feel like I'm in a different headspace where I usually have, music on, and I'm totally distracted, like totally in this like sensory deprivation, just like drawing, and I can think a lot, like not necessarily more clearly, but less like purposefully. Like it's like the thoughts are happening in the background. I'm distracted enough that like I can process things more on a like basal raw level with drawing. Is that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I think it's really interesting because your work is sort of both like high energy and exploding at the side, like at the margins of the page. And at the same time, like you said that you hate like that structure and you do not get along, but you can see the intentionality and the sort of discipline that you put into making these wild stories fit exactly in the confines of the story that you have decided needs to be told. Like it's such a great combination of sort of wild energy and really good, careful storytelling. So hearing that the two sides of that sort of hone it into that single thing is really interesting.
So one thing I don't know if I could jump in.
Yeah, please do.
So something I've very recently learned about myself, I think, is I've always seen myself as a lazy person, and I don't think I'm lazy. I think that I am resistant to authority or something. Like I don't.
But you know what? I got to step in because it's like I used to feel that, you know, myself too. But you chose the life of an artist. You're a successful artist, and the truth of the matter is, most of us have a problem with authority. We have a problem with time. We have a problem with schedules. We have a problem with you know, we all know how to show up on time or whatever. But your time zone, the way you experience time, is relative to your creativity. It's got nothing to fucking do with expectations or the clock. That's the artist's life. Stop thinking you're lazy. I'm gonna mute now.
So speaking of the artist's life, we actually have like a whole slew of questions that are basically about other art forms and what your relationship with them might be. So I'm just going to combine them, let you know what they are. You can answer the way that you like. So Sarah would like to know if you have other artistic pastimes and passions. Jeff would like to know what TV show you would most like to write an episode for if given that opportunity. An anonymous person would like to know if you would like to act. And Jeff would also like to know, or a different Jeff, if you've ever thought about adapting your comics as animation. So would you like to be on TV? Would you like to write TV? Or would you like to do something else entirely?
So I think that I definitely want to do, like, I have a lot of things on my creative bucket list. There's a lot of things that I want to explore, and like, I don't think that my current format is like the limit of what I want to do. So as far as like acting goes, it's something I'm curious about and I would consider it. I think it would be I like learning new things. I like trying new things. And so I think if the situation was right, I would consider it. As far as doing a TV show or anything with my comics, for the same reason I didn't want to read the voices. I think that I wouldn't want to do a TV show with my character. I think it would be too hard to get the tone right and maybe I just have something against sound. I don't know. I process things very visually and sound feels scary.
Well, why don't you tell us what happened with the Garfield thing, so maybe we can unpack this trauma and get you talking.
So I had a voice in my head for what Garfield would sound like, and it wasn't like I think, first of all, my expectations weren't reasonable. I was expecting him to sound like a cat.
Yeah.
Right. Which you right. But there's this weird like thing where you can imagine things that you've never actually seen before. You know, you can imagine these sort of like impossibly suspended states of things that you can't actually achieve, at least with our limited tools in reality yet. And so I think it was an issue of that, where I was imagining this thing that I could make up in my own head, that would not have actually been possible for any voice actor to fulfill. But it was different enough that I used to read the comics and newspaper like religiously. I loved them. Mm-hmm. And Garfield was like a very, very familiar thing. And so when it showed up and it's, you know, with this voice, that it was just like, oh my God, what? No, this changes the meaning. I don't want to do that to anybody. I don't want to.
Interesting.
I don't want to take this a thing that may have been like, because people tell me that my work has been comforting to them, and I want to sort of like preserve that comfort, or I don't want to.
You don't want to
not
sit there.
Like shit on Garfield.
No, I get it. It's just like that the visual experience, like, reading, even like comics, like, how that you experience that is it's a very unique thing to have, animation and written words, that, even if you don't, like you said, you can't exactly picture it, it works, it's magic from there. So if all of a sudden you audition somebody like me or Sam Rockwell to read for one of your dogs or Duncan or somebody, you're gonna be like, no, like that's a whole different, this isn't even what I created. I can't be part of this. This is an abomination.
Right. And it's like I
get it.
I feel like there's a part of like the experience of, say, specifically with like reading things, or anytime you're like a big, so like when I read a book, there's something I get from being part of the experience, from like participating in the creation of this. And so, yeah, I think I don't want to fuck with that. I don't want to.
I just had a weird experience with this because I had to interview Matthew McConaughey, right? So they sent me his book, and really, I would not have read an entire Matthew McConaughey memoir. It just would not have. I wouldn't have thought I would do it. But just in terms of what we're talking about now, and I said it to him, I said it to his face. I said, Matthew, with this philosophizing and all this sort of like poet philosophy, wise man shit. I said, if anyone else had written this, it would have been annoying. But because it was you, it wasn't, because I could picture him saying it. So like the entire book, I just pictured him saying, I'm like, this is ridiculous, but McConaughey can pull it off. So I guess it's the same thing. It's
like Clippy the Paperclip. Like they created this character to deliver this message, like, oops, you just made a mistake, but I'm a paperclip, so don't get mad, for me, for criticizing you.
I love that that's a point of reference for you. Alex, what was the other two parts of that question?
Oh, yeah. What was that part of the question? That was whether you would consider it an animated version of your work. If you were to write an episode of TV, what show would it be for?
Okay, so my immediate reaction, and I don't know, I always have, like, I want to pick the optimal pinnacle favorite for everything. It's very important to me internally. But the first one that pops to mind is What We Do in the Shadows. That has been my favorite recent TV show. I like the tone quite a lot. And so it would probably be that one.
That feels like a fantastic fit. That would be great. Oh, and then I think the third part was, are there other mediums that you already are like passionate and engaged with that we haven't gotten to see yet?
Creatively, like, I don't know, there are a lot of things I do on like a daily basis that, like so for example, playing Hearthstone, that's something that I commit a lot of time to. I'm trying to like improve in a very serious way at this game, because I think strategy is important. I think improving your strategy and learning how to think better is an important part of like improving in other areas. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I think that I'm interested in like expanding into other areas, because I think like it helps a person be more rounded. I've been interested in math lately.
That's great.
And so that's a thing where it's like, it just seems sort of like, if you understand math on a deep level, it's a key to understanding other things. Like you can strip it.
I do the same thing, man.
You did the same thing?
Well, no, I just think that, like, I'm a grown up now. It's time to really wrap my brain around math. And like, maybe it would have helped out at another time. What I'm relating to is this idea that like, I cannot be a whole person if I can't, like, there's so many elements that I need that are missing, and math is one of them, and a child, it
feels like a thing, like you've got to try it. If there are all these possibilities out there, it feels like you're losing value for not trying.
Yes, yeah, but like, maybe I'm getting old. I'm older than you, so let me save you some time. You'll hit an age where you're like, fuck it, man. I am who I am, and this is it, man. The only way I'm going to get better is by accepting who I am now.
I think I'm starting on that. Like I'm the first parts in that journey. It's maybe I've hit like the early stages of that. I feel comforted about my trajectory from this point.
Yeah. Good. Good. And now, unfortunately, like, did you find this thing like, we didn't even talk about this plague that we're living in, and I think one of the reasons is that, like, if you're an isolating person, it was sort of like, it's like, I know how to do this. You mean I don't have to go out and I just have to go to the store quickly? I mean, how are you handling it with your head?
I mean, it's like you said, it feels like less of an adjustment for me. It's something that I feel I can remember, like I've had the drive to isolate always, but I haven't always felt comfortable being alone.
Right.
And so I do remember that experience, like the adjusting to that isolation that sort of felt like, oh man, this is something that I can't escape from right now. Like there's no reasonable way to get out of this. And so, yeah, I have a lot of like empathy for people who are going through it for the first time, people who are more used to, say, going out and having a regular social life, who are suddenly, they're saying you have to stay in your house. And that's a huge adjustment. Change is hard.
Yeah.
Period.
It's also scary, but I tell you, your book is very helpful. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting the questions coming.
It's good. That's what makes it.
It happens.
So I think that's probably a good segue. I think you will not be surprised to learn that a ton of the questions in the comments are from people who have experienced loss, who have experienced mental illness, who found your work really meaningful and helpful. So I just want to read out a few of their comments and then sort of bring them together. So Victoria says, I'm a young professional woman struggling with depression and anxiety, and your work makes me feel less alone. Emily says, I'm a clinical psychologist, and Hyperbole and a Half is the most important book in my clinical library. I use it at least once a week, and it's helped me reach some of my most challenging clients. Chris says, I sought help for depression because of Depressions Part 1 and 2. After 7 years of success, I've lost a parent, and I'm now struggling again. And there are lots of other stories just here in the comments of people whose lives have been, changed. And obviously, being somebody who shares their story and has that kind of effect, people feel that you may know something about how to make your way through it, which is, I think, evident from the fact that you've made this new book. So, sort of to simplify and lessen the burden of the potential question, I could ask you, is there something that you've found very, very helpful that some people may also find very, very helpful?
So there have been a few things, like it's something that I'm still very much in the process of figuring out for myself, and I can't speak to how the experience is for anybody else, because I think there's some amount of obviously overlap, but there's variables that make it confusing if you're trying to map it one-to-one. But I think just for me personally, some of the types of thoughts that have been comforting to me in my darkest moments are things, like Mark was saying about you're a man on a couch, that type of thought. I've literally had moments like that where it's just okay, wherever I am, it's me under a blanket. That's the reality of everything that is happening in this moment right now. Being able to pull back from all of the auxiliary feelings, because when you're having feelings about something, you're also having feelings about the feelings you're having. Yes. And feelings about and to put a stop to that by I don't know, just agreeing to, all right, I'll just take the openness that we were talking about, just taking the moment as it's coming toward you, and it almost feels like it represents a type of bravery to myself that I can believe in, that I can be well, this is
yeah. I think there are lots of ways of talking about the acceptance of the feeling. It doesn't mean you have to immediately feel good. It doesn't mean that the situation isn't bad. It just means that you're able to sit in place with what's going on.
because
Um,
sometimes there's not a lot you can do to change it.
yeah.
And also what I realized about myself, and I don't know if this is helpful to anybody, but like, I'm not really fundamentally a depressive, but I am a very anxious person. And if you
Yes,
have,
yes.
severe anxiety, you know, it can send you into a sort of weird, exhausted paralysis that feels like
Yes.
depression, but it's really just some manifestation of dread based on future thinking and panic. You should
Almost a coping
separate.
mechanism, honestly. It feels like
Right.
it's like like the out for anxiety. It's like I'm
Yeah.
gonna adopt
Right.
this state to deal with the
Right, but I find that
maddening.
it's helpful to feel, to sort of separate, like, am I clinically depressed or am I consumed with panic and dread? I mean, I know they can
Yes,
kind of,
yes.
they can meet someplace,
Mhm.
but just from experiencing loss, you start to realize, like, well, this is sadness. Like, this is
Yes,
real
yes.
sadness. That's what that feels like. All right, so then if you start to separate these sort of like tremors and waves of emotion that you have that are unmanageable or causing you distress or immobilizing you, it's good to sort of have a clear sense of what they are.
This actually
Okay.
perfectly segues into the next thing I was gonna say, which is like, so in order to do that, like in order to be able to separate this feeling from this feeling, you kind of have to go through a feeling that teaches you that.
Mhm.
That teaches you okay, this is what sadness feels like. This is, you know, a 10 out of 10 sadness. And I don't know if this is like, sometimes I feel self-conscious because I don't know if the things I'm saying are like actually comforting. This is just the way that I comfort me. But the idea that like there's value in like every experience because it's valuable later. Like I think I said this more coherently at a different point. I'm trying to remember. This may have been. I went on a cruise ship at some point during this 7-year absence and did a speech there.
Then you can't get off the boat.
right. And oh God, give me 1 second. I felt like when I said the thing, I was like, oh yeah, I need to remember this because I'm gonna need to say it later. But the idea that there's no wrong data, only wrong interpretations. So that like there's value in no matter what mistake, no matter what bad feeling you're going through, there is some inherent value in that thing, in that it gives you information for the future, for later, for like either comparing things to, or to, you know, feeling like I often will comfort myself by feeling like, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as it was this other time.
Here's the other thing that is tricky, and just from my own experience and self-investigation, what you're talking about is that if your comfort zone is miserable, you're going to have some problems. Like,
yes.
and you really have to sort of figure that out. Like, if you come from, you know, emotional neglect, you know, physical abuse, emotional abuse, selfish parent, whatever it is, if you had to self-parent because your parents were crappy.
Oh my God, I love that you said that. I love that you said self-parenting.
Yeah, if you
I've
had to,
written so many lines in my like journal are about that exact.
But the problem with self-parenting, if you do it before you're able to know what it is that you're going to be hard on yourself. So this is just something I learned. I guess I'm just telling you. It was from a book called The Fantasy Bond by this guy named Robert Firestone. Is that, like, if you feel awkward when you're younger and it's because of your parents, you have no way to blame them because they're your parents. So you're going to blame you. So the self-parent that you put in place is one that's sort of like, you stink, you're shitty, you're fucked up. So
because it feels like protecting yourself, right? Like
right,
it feels
and it
like
stays
something
with you though, right? So the shame is sort of like where you're at. Like that's my ground level. I'm fucked up. You know, I should be ashamed of myself. I'm stupid. Whatever it is, if that's your ground base, you've got to work against that. You've got to, you've got to what's that dumb sobriety saying? You know, act as if, you know, don't honor your instincts because they're wrong, because they're coming out of a garbage pail. But okay. Sorry, that's my two.
No, this is this is really good. I appreciate you jumping in with, like, the things you're saying perfectly lead into the things I'm wanting to say about this. So it's working out very, very well.
Good. Go for it.
So yeah, the idea of like self-parenting, or like, the thing that made me sort of have this breakthrough was, I forget whether it was my psychiatrist or a different psychiatrist or something I'd read somewhere, but something about imagine the way, like, imagine somebody who you really care about, like your best friend in the whole world, going through the same thing that you're going through. How would you treat them? How would you treat that person?
Oh,
and why am I treating myself so much more shittily than that? Like, why am I such an asshole to myself?
Right.
When I wouldn't be like that. If somebody who wasn't me was going through that, I wouldn't be the way. There's no way I would be the way I am to myself, to them. I'd be a psychopath.
I seem to have to say this to myself a lot. Come on.
Yeah.
Really, man?
But yeah, like, I think that part of it, it's been like learning how to be less abusive to myself, how to be a better friend or parent, or like have a more cooperative relationship. Because ultimately, like, if you're going to try to convince somebody to be different, would you do that by just yelling at them and making them feel horribly ashamed? Or would it maybe be more productive to be like, hey man, like, let me learn a little bit about you. I understand where you're coming from, and approach it from a standpoint of like, look, I know this is scary. I know that that's why you do that. Let's try to like compromise and figure out a way that we can move through this as like cooperative, a cooperative being rather than.
Isn't it weird to stay in emotions when you're talking to people? Like, that's intimacy. When you're talking to people, to stay in emotions. Like, I have like intimacy issues, and I
do too.
Of course. But like, even if like, even if it's just to say like, with like you earlier, like, I'm like, I'm really happy to see you. And it's really like, the joy. I have a really hard time with experiencing joy. It makes me uncomfortable.
I do too.
All right.
In some ways, yeah.
What? I feel like I should. What's going on? What do you got, Alex?
Well, that's actually a pretty good segue to Angela, who asks, I've always appreciated your willingness to share your life with us. Is it ever hard to have so many people privy to your personal life and feelings?
I mean, yeah. I think that there's, I don't think it's the hardest thing you can go through. I think that there is, there's parts about a lot of things that are hard, and it's just I think I'm still learning how to unpack it, how to interact with it. That doesn't make it bad. It's something that I asked for this in a way. Like, it's not like their fault.
No, but don't you find that? Am I on? Don't you find? Because it took me a long time to adjust to. It seems to be getting darker where you are, Allie. You're slowly.
It is
are you going to sleep some? Are you going?
No, I have my blanket for it. Let's see. Let's do some like creepy side lighting here.
Okay.
All right, there we go. All right.
Wow. Oh, so what I was saying is, like, because I put all my shit out there too, but you get used to it. Like, you must get used to people coming up to you going, like, how's the dog? Like, there are certain things in my life that people just know. And I know that I run a very intimate thing that I do. And I know it's one-sided, but I'm also I try to be as gracious as possible with people. And they're usually aware that it's one-sided. But, after I do a comedy show or something and people come up to me going like, is Monkey okay? What's going on with the cat? And I'm like, oh yeah, everyone knows everything about me. He's all right. So I just have this ongoing conversation with hundreds of strangers that I don't mind it too much, but sometimes they don't realize that we have, life, and like you can't respond to everything.
And that's I think that I lack practice a little bit, because like in my daily life, like, this is really something I only get to practice like during times like this, where I'm talking to a lot of people and interacting with a lot of people. It genuinely goes like years and years and years between that for me. Just
right.
Where it feels like I haven't quite had the the practice with it. But I feel, I don't know, like I feel curious about people. I feel like I kind of welcome a weird interaction, whatever it is, if it happens, just because it's interesting, right?
But I also think like maybe we want to be known, but not that well. You know, like,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Like I want to be able to say things.
right. Well, we put ourselves out there, and it's nice if people connect with it and they connect with us. But it's also nice to be like, all right, I'm gonna go, you know, without.
Yeah. I've been trying.
It's on the show. It's in the book. You know.
Was that a cry for help, Mark?
No. I'm just trying. No, I have a hard time with social media, social network. I got to get off because I engage with people, and then like, you know, because you create an intimacy with your work, there's an intimacy there, but like it's not a real one because I got other things
you
to
can't
do.
have like a healthy relationship
Right.
with your audience because
And
it's a
right. And if you engage, you could hurt feelings just by, you know, not engaging anymore. You know, if you just like, hey, thanks. And then it's like, oh, he said something. What's going on? And then all of a sudden you're in this thing for like days and you're like, oh my God, I don't know this person. It's getting weird. I got to get out. And then all of a sudden you lose a fan because you connected with them.
Or I'm worried that I'm going to say something that's like, you know, I'm sometimes in situations where people are asking me like difficult things, you know, like things that are very meaningful for them. And I can see that. And it like, I at once feel like honored that that they went to me, but also feel like really, really unprepared to like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know the answers to these things. And I can try to say comforting things, but I'm really worried that I'm not going to do a good job.
You can also always preface stuff with, in my experience.
Yes. As
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but if you come from there, you're okay.
I feel like that is an important thing to like, you know, recognize like something in humility, like acknowledging, like a nod to, I'm not, look, like please don't base like, you know what is best for you. If some of the things I'm saying like match up with that.
Right.
It's, I think of it like being an open source. Like I try to be an open source material like that. So this is what I'm doing. Right. If you want to like, if it seems like it would work in your thing.
Right. But if they're like, what should I do? You're like, I don't know, but this is what I did. Is that going to help? Yeah.
Yeah. And I worry, like, I think that it's something that it's hard because I'll engage with the worry a bit too and be like, oh man, like, did I help them? You know, did they,
are they going to be okay? Should I have gotten their phone number? Oh man.
Yeah.
Why did that person just ask me on the street how I was doing? Now I'm worried about them.
I think that
I feel like we're bordering on it. Just we might as well be doing a FaceTime.
Yeah. Huh?
It feels like we're just doing a FaceTime now, just me and you. Which is
I
like
think it's great. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
What's up, Alex? I don't want to neglect everybody.
Let's see. I do have a few. I have a lot more, but I have a few more lined up. So let me know how you're feeling. But I do have from Laura sort of a related question, which is your vulnerable honesty, humor, and creativity have touched a lot of people. How does that feel? And did you anticipate sort of the reaction and the level of reaction to your work when you started, or were you totally blown away?
Totally blown away. It's something that is I do not know how to interact with it. I don't know how to like it doesn't compute in my like lizard brain as far as like I don't think this is an experience that animals have typically where it's like, you know, hey, there's like this many animals paying attention to you and wanting to know what you're saying and impact like when you say this thing, it's going to impact this many animals in the conveniently displayed stats on your Instagram page. And yeah, I didn't expect it. And I feel like as far as the way that it internally feels, it feels like it's obviously a good feeling when people are supporting you and reaching out, and it feels like like I think I said like touching something in the void earlier. It feels like that a bit, and like there's also this feeling like I know how much I like it. Like I can recognize how much I like the attention, and I also want to like take steps to protect people from that. Like to protect from, like I have this feeling like, oh well, I have a certain amount of power, right? That is when you have the ability to influence people, or people who are like they're listening to you or wanting to pay attention to you. I have a feeling of like, oh man, I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to don't want to do anything with this that's gonna.
But
So,
then
yeah,
there are those days where you're like, why do they love me? What are
yes.
they
Oh my
thinking?
God. Yeah.
Oh my God, all these people, they don't know. They don't know.
So it's always easy to write it off as like, oh well, I've packaged myself in this convenient, relatable form. That if they knew the truth, if they knew like how messy my house is on a daily basis, and how true they'd feel alienated and weird. And it's something that I'm working on as far as like I want to figure out how to do that type of honesty, like the thing that where you show the real thing in a way that like isn't so traumatic for other people to see, that they can actually like relate to it somehow.
I think you're doing a good job. I mean, you can keep some things to yourself. It's okay. You don't.
I mean, it's not like I'm a monster or anything. I'm talking about like I've got a pile. There are a lot of cans near my and on my bed.
What kind of can?
LaCroix cans.
Oh, they're just around.
I'm staying hydrated, and I have other things to think about, so I don't like
throw things away.
Yeah, a lot of like I do it sporadically,
Uh-huh.
but the level of like messiness, it doesn't bother me as much as like it's not my top priority a lot of times. I'm like, I'm thinking about stuff, like I don't want to deal with this. So I feel like there's like if people knew my actual lifestyle, if they could see like the actual lifestyle.
I got to tell you, I'm not surprised. You're not surprising.
Yeah, I feel like it would be like alarming.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think that you've created a world for yourself by exploring what you explore, to where like people would be like, oh, that she lives in a large nest of some kind. They'd be like, of course she does. I wonder if you could really surprise people.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of like the allure, right, of putting the weirdness on display, is that it's why we like it's why we watch Hoarders.
Yeah, of course.
Because we're fascinated by that stuff.
Yeah, for when they find the third dead cat. It's like, how did you not? That one's the worst. They're like, oh yeah, that cat. I remember that cat. Okay.
Yeah. But I think that fascination is probably a good reflex. It's probably there's empathy in there somewhere that we're feeling for like wanting to learn about other people.
Well, and also everybody likes to have stuff, and everyone's a little. If you're a certain type of person, you're like, I got to be careful with the records because they're getting a little out of hand.
Yeah, like you learn to have your back in those situations. Like I've seen how this goes, and where it's likely to go if I don't step in. And so like right now, I'm just going to tell you the signs are lining up that it's gotta
I think I have to go to the restroom. You guys can keep going, but I think I'm going to go. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I'm probably going to have to go here pretty soon. So thank you for being the first one to go. Thank you for introducing the
idea.
Like jumping over that hurdle.
Well, thank you for asking me to talk to you. It was great seeing you. Stay in touch with me. Call me anytime. Email me if you want to do this privately and just talk about things. I'm just making myself available.
Sam.
Publicly. Okay. Talk to you later. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
Mark.
Bye.
Bye, Mark.
Bye.
All right.
What
do you think?
All right. I think I can do more questions. People have more questions.
I will tell you
I want to put
something
this in a less
totally honest, which is that we now have so many questions that when I open the question box, my computer freezes. So we can ask the questions that are on the top of the Q&A at this time.
Is this a better lighting situation? By the way, can you see?
It's. I can see you. We can see her, right?
It's weird to like not people rely on like lip reading or like facial expressions for communication. And
Is Mark just frozen there for everyone, or is it really just my computer?
I can't see it.
Oh yeah, that's a good sign.
Mark.
Well, let's see. I've been holding on to this question, which I quite like. Julianne says, I have a 12-year-old who is very creative and weird. Do you have any advice for a tween?
So advice might be hard because I don't know her, but I could tell, I could give advice to me, and if any of it seems useful, because I was also a weird tween. I was very, very weird 12-year-old. And I think at the time it felt humiliating to be that way, to be different. But as an adult, I think I've realized like what the value in that is. Not fully, like I still feel that like reflexive weirdness about it, but like I'm starting to realize that there is like inherent value in novelty, or something that feels like it's, regardless of what it is, like whether you can figure out how to access the value, or whether it's just this like strange thing that's simply difficult to understand. It's very important to have those people in the world, like to have people who are weird and different, because if we didn't, we would do things the same way forever. And I think for me, those types of thoughts have been comforting, sort of like seeing, like learning how to see rather than judging myself for how weird I'm being. And, you know, like obviously there are weird things you can do that you'll want to change, things that are like, oh, well, I hurt this person because I'm weird in this way. You know, I didn't know how to not be defensive or reactive in this situation. Like, I'm not necessarily advocating a like, well, I'm just going to be mean no matter what the consequences are of that thing. But I think as long as you're curious and gentle and approach things from a point of like wanting to understand and wanting to how do I put it? I think that if you're a good person, it doesn't matter how weird you are. Yeah, that.
I think that's a really incredible answer. Yeah, and I think when you were saying before about that sort of internal fear of if people see the full weirdness of you and not the weirdness that you have like deliberately laid out and turned into stories, that would turn people away. I mean, I think what really draws people to what you do is that it's immediate and intense in a way that I think hits people at home. And I think it like people read it because it's funny, yes, but people read it because it brings them relief. And I mean, my advice in your direction would be that probably all of us are actually also living in nests and grateful a lot of the time that people can't see us. But you're showing us that our nests are good things. So I think that's what people are responding to.
I think we can all like, it's a mutually beneficial situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Everybody, it's comforting to know that, like for me too, I've said before, like it's super comforting to know I'm not alone. I didn't know that was the response I was going to get from people, but like the number of people who have, even about weird stuff, like there's stuff that I'll post on Reddit, say, and like comments, I test out what it's like to be honest about this very scary thing. And even then there's people who will like respond and be like, you know what, I don't have exactly the same thing that you do, but maybe we can relate over this like kind of related thing that we share. And I think it's super, super beneficial and helps, you know, that's I think earlier I mentioned, was it empathy or compassion that I was saying is like a logical response? I think that's what I mean, is that like it ends up being good for everybody involved. And
Yeah, well, I
And
think
that's a good kind of equation.
but I think especially with
Oh, you
mental,
froze.
uh, especially with like mental illness of any kind, um, like it's very, very common, but even when everybody around you is dealing with something, it's also so incredibly isolating. And it's so hard to, because everyone's experience is so specific. And I think sometimes specificity is actually like what helps people bond more. Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
generalities, exist, but that's not actually what makes people bond. And so I think, yeah, when you actually see somebody else's very particular experience, you're going to feel the world opening up to you in a way that like a DSM criteria just won't do for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it makes sense, that you get that really like particular response.
I
And
love
that's
that you
just,
use the word specificity.
yes.
It's one that comes up a lot. Like, I think that there was a tool to like look through all the documents on my computer and like what the most common words in those would be. Specificity might be up there.
Oh, it's a good word, right? It
It
speaks
is a
to good
very good word.
things. Um, and actually, while we're talking about work that gets at people, is there anything? Were there weird works that made you feel more at home in the world the way your work does for other people?
Yes.
I shouldn't really
And
put that in
it's
the past tense either, because like I'm sure there's still new stuff coming out all the time.
so the most recent book I've read, and it isn't really a like story. There is a story to it, but it's not, and none of this stuff is very similar to my work. So this isn't like a if you like this, you'll also like this. But there's a Swedish artist named, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. I apologize
We're
already.
ready.
Simon Stallenhag, who does these beautiful post-apocalyptic paintings, and he writes stories to accompany them. And I just get lost in these work. I feel like I'll find them online and like zoom into every little detail and just try to learn how to like paint from him. And so it's not like a direct impact in that like I don't know how much the stories influenced me as much as the pictures, but I felt very, very strongly like I could learn something from this person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the book The Little Prince has always been a favorite. Douglas Adams stuff. Read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas recently, which I related to in a completely different way. Like it's the things that I like. It wasn't like oh, I feel so comforted and supported kind of feeling, but I think that there was like an important realization in reading that for me of like freedom and just chaos and probably what everybody else feels when they read Hunter S. Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I feel like I'm giving generic answers. I don't want to give generic answers.
I mean, your answers are also like everything that you're listing is very, very different from everything else that you're listing. And I mean, I think that's like interesting and speaks well to sort of what you were saying earlier about wanting to learn to be good at things that don't necessarily have like a practical, obvious application.
I thought of one.
Oh, good.
Khalid Azad. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name either, but
Oh, yes.
he did the website Better Explained, and the article specifically on imaginary numbers changed me, like changed the way I think about things. It like I can't tell you exactly what it was about it, but just something as far as like the potential to act as like a metaphor for other things.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking this very like it's literally called the complex plane, but it's I would highly recommend. It's totally free to go to the website, but I would recommend going to Better Explained and reading. There's lots and lots of different things. He explains calculus principles. He explains like economy principles. He's just good at understanding things and putting them into terms that you can also understand. Also, the physicist Sean Carroll, similar. I haven't read books, but I've watched a lot of like YouTube lectures that he does, and a brilliant man that I feel truly inspired by his ability to put extraordinarily complex ideas into a format that like I can grasp with my like layman's perspective.
Yeah, that speaks to also to the sort of like honing down that you were talking about earlier, where I think a lot of the best work is work where you can take the complex and like clarify it. So when you can get to like what the heart of something is, you're probably doing a better job with all the information in your head than if you, unless it's like a technical document, in which case it's probably good to be specific.
Yeah, there's times for specificity, there's times for generality. Like that's why we have the two systems, right?
And I always feel like it's a really impressive feat when somebody can take the vast and the complex and just figure out which 10 words they need to explain this like 50 pages.
Yeah. And it's impressive in like a self-evident way. Like it's just like that. This is undeniably impressive. What this physicist is doing.
Yeah. Oh gosh, let's see if I can get this to it. The last couple times I tried it, absolutely froze. So.
Oh
no. Okay. Yeah, I feel like there was one other thing that I really wanted to ask, and I'm forgetting what it was. This person said that this conversation had great chemistry. They said that at 8:22, so it has nothing to do with me. Let's see.
You've been part of the chemistry.
Do you have a favorite chapter? This is like, do you have like a favorite cat or child? Do you have a favorite chapter in this book?
So
you're excited to share?
There's different, it depends on like what criteria I'm using. You know, if I'm saying like, what's my favorite chapter as far as like if I was making a playlist to show my friends and I was going to try to put the songs on there that would be like, I think would be most appealing to them and also most appealing to me, that kind of thing. You know, when you're, those like playlist decisions, when you're making like, all right, well, this is going to be like a little bit more like within the Venn diagram of our overlap. Can I look at the table of contents real quick?
Oh yeah.
I want to try to.
By the way, guys in the chat, thank you so much. Every time somebody brings something up, you are dropping the links in immediately. That's incredibly helpful. So thank you. I also see that you guys are like starting a Facebook group, so I'm really happy. Like everybody in the chat is just making like they're making
good job, you guys.
Instant friends, which is really good.
So all right. I'm gonna give three that I think are different that I like for different reasons. So I think the one about my neighbor kid, the I think it's the third chapter. I think that she, in the process of writing about it, I sort of came to some realizations about myself that were important, and seeing, you know, like in interacting with her, I could see the ways that she was weird, and it helped me appreciate the ways that I'm weird. And so for those reasons, I think that chapter is up there for me. I think the Ugly Duckling 2, which is chapter 20, that one came out way easier than the other ones. That one was like markedly easier to write than the other chapters, and so for that reason, I like that one. And then the final chapter, for like personal reasons, like it's special to me because it's like this. And I even saved it to work on when I was feeling really distressed, or times where I was feeling really sad and felt like I needed a way to like bond with myself. And so that chapter in a like emotional sense is probably my favorite.
Yeah, well, obviously we're all going to be very, very excited to read all of the chapters, but getting to hear a bit more about some of them like that, I think is going to add to the experience a great deal.
I hope I didn't spoil anything. I'm trying not to, I'm trying to remember that that people haven't read not everybody has read the book. It's hard to,
on its way. Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to, because it's something that I've, read thousands and thousands and thousands of times at this point. So it's easy to assume familiarity there.
Yeah, I really hate asking authors, like, what was the process like for writing this book? And this one, you've had a lot of...
It's fun to talk about process.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear about it. Yeah.
so it's hard to describe the, like, so let's maybe try to get specific. Like, let's approach it from like is there a specific question about the process that we could start from, and then like maybe work outward from there to a.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Did you start with an idea of what stories you wanted to fit into the next volume of your work, or did you sort of start at the beginning and go through? Because it sounds like you had a bit of an idea.
It was very nonlinear, yeah.
And moved between them, you know, when the time was right for each story.
It's a good starting point. I think I can, yeah. It's so typically the way I write is I'll like think about like whatever I'm thinking about, like whatever things are like important in my life or seem like front and center, and just try to like generate as much material as possible. So I don't worry about structure at all for quite a long time. That comes after like so I just try to generate like a volume of material, of ideas. Same having things that you know, a lot of times I'll write out just like long, unfunny explanations of things that are like, well, this is how I think this works, and this is how I think this works, and like come up with examples of how it had, like try to find examples in my life of things that like naturally fit that. But it's sort of a process of exploration too, because I don't know in a specific sense what I'm trying to say. I have a strong feeling of what it's like. I know how I want it to feel when I read it. I know how like how I kind of want it to land on me emotionally, but I sort of have to like look at my own writing for clues of what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense. Like, I'll read over the volume of material and be like, all right, so it seems like you're talking a lot about like power and helplessness. So like maybe that's a theme, and maybe we can like go back through and look at all the other stuff, you know, juxtapose against that background or like through that filter.
So it's sort of like a layering process where like you write, it tells you what you're writing about, then you can do it more intentionally, and it sort of like goes back and forth a little bit. Yeah.
It's like sort of like improving the system over time, like with like machine learning, how they set up neural networks to like gradually improve on each other. It feels a bit, you know, like it's probably a phenomena that's like evident in other structures, right? You know, it's just a processing the information again, thinking about a slightly different thing, and then sometimes something will pop up and it'll be like, okay, that's like a new perspective that I didn't have before. Like trying to find ways to introduce novelty or have new ideas about things. And then it's important for the process, like figuring out how to translate it visually. I feel like it really starts to come together. Like, so I get everything into the written format first. Like that's I don't start drawing the pictures now until later in the process, because I've learned through experience that results in a lot of extra work for me. And so I'll do just the text and then go in and fill in the pictures, and it starts to feel so much better when I'm doing the pictures.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, I have just remembered we did have a question somewhere in there that was specifically, which I really wanted to get to and I couldn't figure out again, but now I will, which was specifically about like how you convey the passage of time in your illustrations.
Interesting.
So I would love to know if you have some thoughts about that.
It is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. It seems like a good question, because it seems like one of those things that I didn't realize was a thing that I needed to think about in this medium until like
yeah, absolutely,
far along in the process. But yeah, so again, I use my own reactions, like as I'm reading through things. If it feels like I try to put myself into a state of mind of like, okay, what would this seem like if I had never encountered this information before? And is the information being presented in like a logical format that like somebody who doesn't have all of the backstory, doesn't have all of the, like sort of like a test of comprehension, like do I have enough pieces here so that people can follow what I'm trying to say? And so a lot of it is just within my own head. I show it to my husband and my editor and my agent often too. We have sort of like they're like the second level of comprehension check. And I promise I'm going to circle back around to time. and so yeah, so time is like an important part of that in community. Like we sort of process things along the arrow of time, like that this thing happened before this thing, and knowing that gives you information about the relationship between the two things.
Yeah.
If time was going the other way, I imagine it would be, so I don't know, I imagine it would be a similar thing, but maybe not. But you have to make sure at every stage to have just enough information. And sometimes you can, one of the only ways to communicate that sometimes is just have a lot of images, say in a row, to like actually take up more time to communicate this amount of time, like I think specifically of there's a series of drawings in the book, in the chapter about my sister, where I'm trying to show her life, and I wanted to spend a lot more time on that. Like I initially drew it with fewer pictures, and it felt weird when I first read through it, and so maybe it's like a sense of like it feels like if I were reading this for the first time, I would feel a bit confused or feel like, oh, maybe we didn't get to know this person in as real of a way, like over this time period. Just try. It's part of the like trying to communicate accurately, maybe like trying to be specific about if somebody was unfamiliar with the story, what they would need to understand about the timeline to understand how. I don't know. I feel like I'm really rambling on this one.
No, but it's so peculiar though, because comics do that, right? Like in prose, you are allowed to indicate things like sound and like space and like time with a totally different set of rules than in comics. And I think especially like time and sound and sensory things, like nobody is telling you what's happening. It all has to be, the amount of space that something takes up on the page ends up subbing in for every sense, which is like really fascinating, a fascinating thing about comics.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of weird like associative things you can do. Like as far as I was trying to figure out, and I don't know if this actually ended up making it into the book, but trying to figure out how to illustrate like a cutscene or something that's really fast, like a fast transition between things. And you can do stuff even with just like the shape of the frame if you make it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like frame shapes and bubble shapes and like.
Yeah, so
it's so fascinating.
There's certain shapes that people will process or because it's like an association or something in the mind that, oh well, this picture is bigger, so and it actually took longer, so it's even stuff like with writing a lot. I'll try to like inject a little bit with the handwriting to convey the tone or time or like
the font, the style of writing makes such a huge difference in like how it's being read. And actually, this is like, okay, so before mostly doing event stuff, I was just a kids bookseller for several years, and one of the understandable but frustrating things about that is how often adults are frustrated by kids wanting to read predominantly comics. And like, I understand wanting your kid to have a balanced reading, but it's also really important, I think, to understand that like comics, one of the reasons that you can do what you do in your book is that comics are an established language, and it's not the same kind of literacy as just straight prose.
Yeah,
and so
it's
like
easier to communicate in some way.
Like any of that other learning, it like every new dialect that you learn like expands your ability to interact with the world and think about things. So it's like really important and really interesting. Is what I
and it's like there's things I definitely a lot of times feel like I think the format developed because I was looking for a solution to the like, and I no pun intended. I'm just not even going to say it. I was looking for a way to have other like timing options available. So like with text, a big drawback of it is you can't communicate as instantly necessarily. Like the range of speeds that text contains is like, it has a different max range. Whereas with pictures, you can communicate a lot of information imprecisely, very fast. So yeah, text is more for like the slow, deliberate. I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that I could get into the nitty gritty about forever because I
no, it's great.
Trying to like figure it out.
And well, your work has a very, very like looks dead at the camera kind of attitude to it a lot of the time. And I think it's possible to do that with prose, but the sense of immediacy of like the shapes, the colors, the format really sort of add to the humor and the sharpness of it. So, you know, it's such a good fit for so many reasons.
Thank you.
And and I think there are some people mentioning this specifically, that like your style is very much like exactly what you need on each panel is what you give. So there's not like a lot of extra
thank you
detail.
very
It's
much
just like
for saying that.
very,
oh my God, that is a
oh
huge
yeah,
compliment.
it's just like, it's very well thought out. So yeah, oh, I don't know where that was going. It's just, they're so good.
I appreciate that. That's sort of like the, you know, I was trying to say things in that way. Thank you.
No, absolutely. So I don't see any other, we have learned what everybody majored in college who went to college in the chat at this point.
Any trends, any interesting, like, there's like over-representation of any.
There's a lot of psych majors, fair amount of art, geology major, congratulations, Pam.
It's Sarah? Oh no.
But yeah, I don't see any more questions. I don't have a ton more. Do you want to talk for a couple more minutes, or are you feeling like we've said? I'm not at all. There's never an all.
There's I want to be respectful of everybody else's time. But yeah, like we could, are you feeling a little sleepy? Is it where it's you, it might be 10 where
me and my 10 o'clock bedtime. Yeah.
It's so yeah, let's take one more question.
Yeah, somebody throw something into the chat. It's on you guys. They're going to go completely silent at this point.
What?
Maybe in the meantime.
I saw personality type. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I can't open them. Let's see. Is there something that you have read or
blanket fort? I see multiple.
Do you see one?
Okay,
great.
I see multiple blanket fort suggestions, or wanting to just see the blanket fort.
Oh, well, maybe we could see the blanket fort.
Okay, we can do. Also, would you guys like to see my cat? Would you bring over? Oh, okay, so blanket fort, zoom out. For some reason, am I muted? I can't hear.
I can hear you.
Okay, so blanket fort, how do we do this? There's blanket fort.
Oh wow, that's high quality blanket fortage.
It's a bunk bed frame, so it was pretty easy to build here. And then we're gonna get some cat in here soon. You're a squirrely man. Come here, bud. Hey, do you want to say hi? Yeah. So is this squirrel? Can you see him? I don't want to put his face in the light or anything. But that's squirrel. It's a good boy.
Getting a good eye glow in here.
That's a good boy. Well, there's the fort, and there's squirrel.
All right. I was hoping to come up with a really genius final question.
Again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Am I back?
Not quite yet. Let me click back to. Let me move this and see if that helps.
I think it's on me.
What if I do? Uh-oh. No, that's not good. How do I go back? Can everybody, okay. All right, chat. Can you see Alex? Okay. Alex freezes, a launch frozen, can't miss. No, Alex is frozen, no, frozen. Okay. Uh-oh.
Am I here? Oh my gosh.
Gallery. Oh. Go back to gallery. There we go.
Okay. Am I here?
I still can't see.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear Alex.
Okay, cool.
It
I sense
seems
the
like
technology
it's nice.
breaking down.
we can talk with a disembodied voice.
Yeah.
We can work with it.
Yeah.
You can hear Alex. Okay. Okay. So everything I've seen says that people can hear.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so I unfortunately, like, genuinely cannot open the question. Every time I open the question
Oh, okay.
answer
So
box,
I've got to answer the question.
yes,
Okay,
so
I've
if
got
you
to
have a
open the
couple
Q&A.
more, yes, it just freezes everything. It's
Is there
given
a
up.
randomized, like, I'm gonna scroll and stop on, oh, okay. All right. Allie, do you have a personal theme song? I have many theme songs that I personally, oh my gosh, that's a hard one. Oh man. So let me look at my playlist real quick. Can you still see me? Am I okay? Theme song. So I've been listening to, there's a band called Arcasia. It's an orchestral dubstep composer. And I would say that it's probably my favorite musical artist at this point in my life. And so it would be one of those songs, likely. Maybe Synopsis Part 1. Oh yeah, I do have a playlist on Spotify. It was a personal, I made one recently because I am really like weird about playlists and I always feel like I'm trying to like impress people. And so I made one recently where I was like honest about my favorite songs and made it public because that was a oh, Alex's video's back. Hey, oh my gosh.
Go back. It's spinning again for me. I'm sorry. I think that the technology is about to give up, but
well, this has been amazing.
I want to note that
there's
there's one like incredible question in the comments right now, which is, I have pet spiders that need names. What would you name three tiny jumping spiders?
3 tiny jumping spiders. Well, Jumpy, obviously, because you need one that is like the straight shooter. So everybody knows who Jumpy is. He's a jumpy spider. Mr. Face and Corner Bob.
Oh, yeah.
So whichever one seems like he's hanging out in the corners the most, that should probably be like he's communicating that he wants to be Corner Bob.
Well, congratulations to everybody in the audience who hates spiders. We hope that this has brought a really chill ending.
I've been trying to have pet spiders. I have been trying to be more cool with spiders.
Yeah.
All
Actually,
right.
here's one more good question,
Absolutely.
which is from John, which is, what is your saving grace this year? Which, as we know, has been quite a year.
Honestly, people looking at just what. I think that there's something in like everyday interactions that, that people don't necessarily see. You just see people like being nice to each other or whatever at the pharmacy, at the grocery store, online, and comments. And there's something really heartening to me about, they don't know that anybody is observing these moments, but they're still like good to each other. That has genuinely been a big deal.
Absolutely. I think we've seen a great deal of that in the audience today. So thank you so much, Allie, for this book. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you guys too. This was fun.
And thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Thank you guys.
Good night.
Good night.